preaching.
You've been warned.
I know, I get that. Having sat through these people fighting, it just seems like you're missing the point.
Each their own, I guess, right?
Yeah,
At least
exactly.
There's a process in place for them to take that course of action if they choose to.
That's what they choose to do.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Colleen?
I can.
Hey, how are you?
I can hear you. It's
I
actually
can hear
coming-
you, Amy.
Yeah.
Do I sound horrible or can you hear me all?
Did you get tested again?
I did not get tested. My daughter did, and she's okay.
I think my son can hear you in my basement.
Yeah.
Want me to turn it down?
No, it's
Maybe
fine.
your mother-in-law can hear you too.
Aw. Oh, I'm sorry you're feeling poorly. Can you see, Amy?
I can see, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, the sound is real good from these
I can
speakers.
see clearly now, the owl is up.
Yeah. All right, so I have you unmuted. If you are in a noisy environment, you should be able to mute and unmute yourself.
Yep, I can do that.
Perfect.
I hope you feel better, Amy.
I really don't feel horrible. I just sound horrible, and I have this cough.
Now, get yourself tested. Do
We
the
tested.
at-home test.
Yeah, we tested my daughter twice because she stayed home from school a few days, and she was negative both times.
How about
And then
you?
I got it this weekend.
Well, I have some at-home government tests. If you want them, I'll bring them over.
I guess I still have a handful.
I know of a gentleman who is
Right.
vaccinated, double boosted, and he came down with the virus recently, and he has allergies, so he's really
Oh, geez.
struggling. He's really struggling. But I heard from him today that he's starting to turn the corner.
Good.
That was the cutest sneeze ever.
Well, I
It
was
was like
trying,
a Barbie sneeze.
well,
Oh, you haven't heard my manicure sneeze. It's just a little,
well, I was giving her a hard time because she's like, I didn't take my allergy medicine today. I said, I can give you some. And she's like, no, it can wait. And I'm like, I'm gonna be so snotty to you when you sneeze in the middle of the meeting. And then I
and
literally
then you
sneezed.
did.
Mhm. All right, well, this is great. It's recording now.
Good.
I don't know how to stop it for the finance meeting. So I guess it's all public, so I guess it doesn't matter
Yeah.
when the meeting starts. I may just upload all of that for public record then. So, Patrick, well, I'm here in front of a computer and I got a few minutes. What was what was the site I needed to go to put this mail thing on here to design?
Well,
It was called.
is it,
Activa
do you have it in
InDesign.
InDesign?
Mhm.
Okay, so tomorrow,
I can just send it to you and
if
your
I
designer.
remember, yeah, you can just send me a PDF.
Okay.
The Creative Suite doesn't want to work on my old Mac laptop anymore because it doesn't have the new M1 processor. So unfortunately, I can't use my Creative because my laptop actually outlived
My sister lives up there also.
Adobe usefulness.
I
So
gotta get out of, I was warming it for you.
Were you?
I
Thanks.
was warming it up for you.
but I've got other computers where I can just drop that Indicia on there and send it off to the printer and get it going.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, so move that over here.
So,
See, I was gonna.
okay,
I just want it close to you, Steve.
that's fine.
Don't tell your wife, she's probably listening.
Not yet, you don't have it turned on, right?
I do,
It is on.
I do.
Oh,
And Amy's here too.
Steve, did you ever hear from my old neighbor, or maybe they're still going?
No, I haven't.
Your name is Nellis?
Sure.
I
know, because that was when I remember.
Yeah, no, I've been checking, I was gonna say it.
So.
I think I just lost Amy and I just unplugged her.
Hey, we've got these cracks that are transmitting through, which is normal. In the sake of transparency, I'll let you know that I'll just know it's not due to a defect in the workmanship. Really any feeling in that stuff is the county.
I'm talking about village and good health.
Okay, all right.
And I believe it,
Oh.
No.
Text message thing and then we can.
Sounds good, thank you.
Set up some test stuff.
Hey, how you doing, Jerry? Pretty good, pretty good. Do you line up any sweetness this weekend? Yeah, in fact, I just sent it off today. The map, the county's gonna do it and probably, they said within the next couple of weeks, but at least before the end of the month. And I had that in the report. Yeah, well, that's good. They got good speaker and they do a good job. Yeah, I mean, you know, I do them twice a year now and they seem really receptive and they're not too expensive. But I gotta be here at 8 o'clock, so, yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
How are you guys? 9:30?
Good. It says here, I think.
The letters went out.
Figure out.
Give them till
So I just.
June 1st to respond, and if they don't do anything, we especially this week. Yeah, they've got, they went out certified.
Okay.
First, and then after that.
Yeah, well, just so
Yeah.
Yeah. You're getting it. I believe it is, yes. Yeah, I saw that. He admitted they got too much warehouse space. We're meeting tomorrow at noon. And we'll find out when the checks are gonna be.
Office space.
But you've been all approved for that amount.
30% office space is vacant. They can't figure out what to do. These companies are trying to list it out. And they can't get it.
Still, I was reading too, and I don't believe that.
Well, I gotta wait.
They're still not filled. We're in New York.
That's what I was gonna.
That's great. It's not gonna get better.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, I did a funeral today and thought of you.
I washed it on Sunday or Saturday. Washed it in wax.
Oh, what'd you roll?
You know, hand wash.
Just like-
Well, winter wash.
And it was like, although I had to be, I had to be up at church because of the
It's got 20,000
more
miles
choice
on it.
threats.
Oh,
So we were kind of monitoring that.
Until it's.
I gotta be up, I wasn't playing, but I was
Then it doesn't matter.
monitoring.
The brand new, it still looks old.
Right.
Fortunately, we didn't have any issues.
Normally a little bit.
But we had received an email from the Archdiocese of Milwaukee and they wouldn't have sent an email if it wasn't a credible threat.
Yeah, there's always a reason. they do
Yeah.
that.
That had to be credible. That's sad.
Good, how are you
So,
doing today?
I had to be at 2 of the 3 masses. But one of them I can't be up because I'm at the Episcopal Church in Sussex.
You think I ran away? No, come on, you're one of the busiest people I know.
Yeah, I will.
But I did a funeral today and I was thinking, although it was a church thing, as I was doing that, take me home, I gotta be.
Just looking through
You know
the
what? I have
finances.
I just put my car still. No, every time I wipe my counter, I have to.
Wasn't there a line item for the Porta Johns?
That's not why I told you that.
No, I just, when you said that, I was
Oh,
like.
what's that month?
But you were so,
I'm running out the door. I'm
you
trying
just
to.
were so touched by
Wow,
my song.
okay, I thought,
Yeah.
you know, when
And
I
I
saw
sang it.
seasonal, that was
I
like.
sang
Right.
it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just couldn't do it.
Wow,
The singers that I
It
had,
adds up,
the
but
choir that I had that came, they
Right.
couldn't do it.
great.
Yeah,
Okay.
that definitely was. That was.
Started it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, gee, bless you. I'm not gonna listen to that. Oh my gosh. I was giving her a hard time about that, taking her allergy medicine. Now I'm the one.
She said I was gonna be sneezing all
I'll be
night.
getting that
She's the
soon.
one sneezing all night.
As soon as you see those beautiful crab apples busting open like they are, it's like.
That does it to
I'm
you.
not sure, like it's, I'm not too bad, you know, like, my husband,
Oh,
I'm
that's
very
good.
allergic to everything, and I usually put the spring like the lilacs and, yeah, that kind of.
My
I
mom,
told you 2 or 3% right away.
Some days when my eyes just itch like crazy and like, I didn't touch them. I didn't rub them, I didn't
you know, it's
Well, it's
interesting.
windy like this too, it doesn't imagine the pollen that's getting shaken.
What's interesting is my mother had hay fever, and all 6 of us kids, not one of us came down with it.
Stealing,
I
stealing
had
your spot here.
Until I was third.
Not really.
They say you can develop them late in life.
And I grew up on a farm, so
Well, then,
everything that, you know, everything I'm allergic to is like hay, grass, pollen, you know, nothing like the dust or dander
Don't
or.
get used to having
It's
this
just
night.
everything outdoors. So I have it in spring and then usually by the
Yeah, it
4th
doesn't
of July. That first week of July, it's done, because everything's pollen, you know, stuff, and I'm good for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's
Just
why I was
those-
like.
but if you're allergic to all that stuff and you grew up on a farm, you didn't have an issue.
Right, so, yeah, all of a sudden I start sneezing and congested, and, you know, after about the first year, I knew the first 3 months, the first year, I came back to second, I was like, oh, it's a coincidence that I went in and they tested me, like, yeah, you're allergic to that. I'm like,
Yeah, real water.
Thank you. Right?
and then I would take medication, and he would, and then they would start, like, only work like 2 months, and like my body got used to it, so then they switched me on a different one, and I went like, I always say maybe 6 different medications, and now I don't take anything, because
Isaac.
they really don't do much for me,
Oh.
it's like my body, I would say feel immune to it, or it just doesn't work, so,
From
man.
If you manage it.
yeah, could be worse, there's worse things that happen.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your help with the garbage man.
I'm hoping to make
I
it
appreciate
through.
that. I didn't want to bug you, but I wanted you to know that they had
So
missed us. 'Cause,
CTW
you know,
did, they fired up the PRV
you don't
last
know,
week
then
and
you
they
don't
tested
know.
everything. And then
Yeah, they didn't get
Like
our
a day
garbage,
later,
we called them and they said they'd send someone up
they
Friday.
had
Nobody
a
showed.
water
Was that
main,
just this
like one
last
of their
week, Chris, or the week
distribution
before?
mains.
This last
There
week.
was a
Oh, see,
break,
we
so
had
they
2
were
weeks in
out
a
there
row. I'm
fixing
like,
it.
I can't go 2 weeks without garbage.
This
Yeah,
is,
now
this
it's
is the
getting
first
warmer.
I've
The new
heard
driver,
anything from
And she
them.
wasn't familiar with the map.
And then I
Supposedly
looked,
now
there was
that
a
they
picture,
got
I don't know
through
where
it with her
the
completely,
picture was
and like
taken down
completely
there.
where Colleen was. She didn't even know she had picked that up.
And it's like
Of the what?
the
Oh,
road
man.
with trucks in it,
That's what it is.
and it's like,
So many new people
I'm not-
working.
Mhm.
they took
Trucks
Chris's
for what?
next door to the salon. Ours is really on the other side. I don't know how they did.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with that tonight.
Right.
The message that I got said
If you,
very
if that
unacceptable
happens,
connection
call
to
me.
well house with no notice to
You got a
residents.
direct line to them.
No water pressure, just a trickle. Can't even take showers or wash dishes.
Well,
I know they had that problem
They're-
last year too.
there shouldn't have been any disruption to their service at all. There wasn't a need for those.
Yeah, well, I just got that like right before I walked out the door, so.
Yeah,
I said I
I
would share it.
I called Ben as soon as I got that.
That's, okay, I'd like to call the Village of Plan and Finance Personnel Committee meeting to order for Monday, May 9th at 6:45 PM. Roll call, Yates is here, Summers, here, Jensen,
Here.
Reed.
Here,
Item 3, discussion possible recommendation to the village board on payment of bills. looked through these and the only questions I had, Brenda, were that some of these items, like the Advotech stuff. And the Owl Labs stuff. Now you've got it, is this contingency account, you've
Yeah,
got
I
these
just
under
put it
your
in.
ARPA account?
Yeah, I just
or-
put it in the contingency for now. I don't know how she wants me to pay that out of the, I have to check with Wendy. Because it comes in, I mean, it's in, but
Right,
it's not, I don't know, we don't have an expense account for that. So I just put under contingency right now. And
okay,
then I will move that.
okay, so yeah, let's just make sure those
Yep.
get moved.
Yep.
Anything else that we need to know about here? It looks like
No
we got
general
a-
obligation payments, obviously.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty much routine. It's early, it's only the 9th, so we're missing probably some bills, but they'll come in next week.
Yeah. And are these the last of the snow and salt bills from the falls?
Who knows? I'm hoping, but if that was the only one, so. And that one will probably change because I just found my note from Dennis plowing the boulevard, so I have to take some off of there.
Didn't see anything from Von Breezen for any of the grant application review. He didn't call
That
out
was under,
anything.
I think it was under just the general legal. His bill came in weird this time because he has been separating them out between courts and general business and water stuff. And this time it came all as one, so I like said it's early. I don't know if I'm expecting more from him or not, but it seemed like it was all mixed in there, so I had to go through and pull everything out.
But yeah, I did ask him to separate that out.
It has
That's
been
part of it.
for a lot of the time, but
Anybody else?
I was just questioning the 3-inch meter for the well, from Valley Falls. Did we have one that, we
that's,
have a burst or?
no, it's for our well,
Oh,
the
okay,
house, the land and estates well.
gotcha.
That's a new 3-inch meter, and then that's the one that we may need to get the VF unit for, or whatever, what is it called? The radio transmitter, basically, so we can,
Read it when we drive by.
yeah. That's another couple more bucks.
Well, I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend payment of the bills. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action on ARPA funds. The big update is that we have the grant applications for individuals and for businesses. Those were gracefully added and printed for us by Brenda. We also have a postcard that was put together by Colleen that we will finalize as long as we get an approval from the board on these forms tonight. And we'll get that mailed out right away. The application period is going to be from June 1st to June 30th for those grant applications. So we want to make sure we get these postcards out in plenty of time for people to get the word. Anybody here or watching or listening, please let your friends and neighbors that you think might be interested in these grants know that these applications are going to become available soon. And those will be available either printable online, or we intend to also have copies here at the clerk's office. Steve, am I missing anything else that you can think of, or Don?
That, I think we get that.
We got the Owl Labs stuff is going. It's actually testing again tonight. We have trustee Martin's going to attend virtually through that. Security cameras are up and going. The SMS and email program is under testing. So all of those things are going. I don't know the status of the lock work, but I believe are we going forward with
Brenda
modified?
is writing it up. Ron and I went up and down and around on the list.
Okay,
Everything will be serialized. And I have a key order form, of basically a copy of what I've had assigned, that you will be issued your key with a number on this date, and you're responsible for it, and you will return it to a village official and get it signed off before you get your last check.
okay. All right, other than that, I think that covers all the ARPA stuff.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Yeah. And then I just, yeah, they said, so.
Yeah.
So you would have them. If somebody.
Sorry, I didn't. I'll try my darndest to remember this time.
If you write yourself.
And then, I don't know what that guy was.
And it was just a little small. Yeah, it felt like. People were injecting razor. Brandon, did you get the bid in for the roof on the storage?
One of them. Okay.
That would be my guess. Is maybe they're gonna produce it.
Ron, do you have any bid in mind for looking at the back of the storage garage?
And not yet, I contacted a couple of people, just basically, yes, about it, but I had just gone out there yet. So I had anybody come in and go.
This is a, had a,
It's hard to do.
with the slimy tail. Oh, for some. And I've been feeling the other
Hi, Chris.
It's getting old crap. It's really slow. He's the reason.
I had one.
That. Right. Just at this brisket sandwich, I had a red.
I had a full rack.
I got a half. And it's supposed to be 6 rack, and I got like 8, you know.
Yeah, I talked to Justin. He says they are hoping to be like June 1st for the restaurant.
Time to go,
Yeah,
yeah.
it goes well.
You know what? I'm just.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 4 minutes away,
It's got music on the TV.
cold by the time you
So, yeah, we did that. And then, I actually.
He ran out
Maybe
of
like some
on
meetings.
Saturday. I got there.
That figures out.
He was like, I think it was 6 o'clock, let's come back at 5. So we will reserve the full rest of me. And when I came back at like 5:10,
I need
he
about
had
5.
my rack and he had a rack and a half left. He goes, yeah, I had like 8 people at 5 o'clock. They told, come back. So, yeah. He, Friday, he was in Waupun. He said, I forgot what for, he was just on the street or was an event. He had sold 26 racks of ribs, just the ribs alone. On Friday.
Well, and how much are you rent? Was, I think 16 for a half, so he's gonna get
It's
25.
28 for a full rack. But that's the same price as they are. at,
Yeah, we're pretty good at.
No, no, I'm just saying.
East Troy and Double D's, so yeah.
He's gotta get up at 4 in the morning. to start that stuff.
Well, the thing is that we was in Waupun, he got back at 10 o'clock. Then he had to start here like right away for Saturday, so. Yeah.
And he's hard working.
It can be the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah, Patrick too, we should. Yeah.
I'll get around to it.
Oh, really? Oh, did not know that. No, I always thought that was a cute.
And it's got 2 different
Cappuccino right along the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I know it. As you're heading south, it's on your left. I've been past your.
That's a good meal.
Are they like a sandwich or?
No, it's all in their salads are amazing down there.
Now it's like up this neck, routes only. And
Oh, heart. I'm hungry.
Kid twist, or is it just?
Yes.
I do too. I just have to. It's no good. Too fast to go.
Wish your wife said, "No problem, it's like she lost some weight." Ron, have you lost some weight?
Oh, no.
No? Yeah, the girls are looking at you on the camera, they said, you're looking good, you're looking thin and trim.
I can only see from here.
Well, maybe your head's not as bad as it used to be.
There's a lot more like an iceberg down below.
Yeah, I don't like this getting.
I'm so sorry.
Gotta really like those strikers.
I bet they are. Is it was it a model or was it just someone? that you knew?
First one is going to be modeled, the one on Donna's side.
Okay.
What the? I went in that one, and that's the model. The one that's going up.
Brenda, is Amy live?
I believe she is. That'll be the first one.
I'm here on the owl.
She's here.
Thank
Then
you,
there'll be
Brenda.
The other two, because the other two are about one behind.
Yeah, they're going quick.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order on May 9th, 7 o'clock, regular village board meeting. Everybody will rise for the pledge.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Jensen,
Here.
Martin,
Yeah,
Paquette,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Summers,
Here.
Yates,
Here.
all present.
Statement of public notice,
Has been posted.
discussion and possible action on the reading correction and approval of the minutes from the village board meeting for 11/22.
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from 4/11/22.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action on a reading correction and approval of the minutes from the special village board meeting from 4/18/22.
I'll make a motion to approve the special village board meeting minutes of 4/18/22.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Committee reports, finance personnel.
Just a couple items later on in the agenda.
Legislative,
Nothing at this time.
park and rec,
Nothing, just still working on the same thing from last month.
public safety,
Not as good.
public works recycling.
The couple things. The cutter for the new tractor has just been delivered today. They're coming in by the end of the week and they'll install that so that we can start to take care of the roads and right of ways. We've got a meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock with a contractor for a crack and seal repair on the village roads and the parking lot here at the village hall. Violation of tree ordinance letters have been sent out with a June 1st deadline date. And after that, we'll decide what kind of action that needs to be taken, whether we select a contractor or what the homeowner will do. Waukesha County has agreed to do the sweeping for the village streets. And I just sent him a map and a listing of all of the streets. And they should do that probably by the end of the end of the month, no later. We've got an item further down the agenda regarding the Custer Lane rebids on item number 20. Snowplow contracts, they're ongoing. We still haven't heard anything back from the couple that have agreed to, or the couple of contractors that agreed to bid on it. Garbage and recycle, there have been some problems with the garbage pickup on Town Line Road. They tell me they had a new driver and she was very adamant that she had made all of the pickups. And then when they finally went over the map with her, she said, oh, I did forget and didn't know I had to do that pickup. So, and I just learned tonight that Chris had a pickup that wasn't made. So I'll see if I can follow up on that. There's been some talk. I fielded a couple of calls regarding some residents thinking that the town of Lisbon and the village of Lannon have an agreement that they can drop off yard waste at the town of Lisbon. That's not true. We do not have an agreement and never have had one. So I just want to make that clear.
Joe was gonna get back to me on that, Ron. He said that that fell through the cracks, but I haven't talked to Joe in the last week or two.
What's falling through the cracks?
For us to be able to buy a permit there.
Oh.
I bought one last year. It was like $36. but
Village doesn't have one per
They
se.
were working on it, was what he told me.
Some residents have wondered about the possibility of having a dumpster at the village hall to drop off yard waste. I contacted GFL and the operations manager says they do have that available, but they have not worked out a price for us yet. And so we'll see what develops there. And then we've had interest from a couple of organizations regarding the cleanup of local roadways and streets. State of Wisconsin and Waukesha County have a program that does it. And you have to qualify and meet certain requirements. I would like to have the committee meet and discuss some of the things that need to be done, such as insurance, regulations, and some kind of an application form. We're going to do that within the next week or two, so we'll have some information for the June 1st meeting. That's all I got.
Thank you. This kind of goes along with it because Ron got dragged into this along with Kelly. The lack of maintenance on some of our buildings. Kelly and I have talked about the parks, Ron and I talked about here. We've got some bids going out. Looked like there was quite a bit of maintenance that was not handled. Thank you, Ron. Quarry report.
I just have a couple things. I want to address the blast from Land and Stone Products on April 18th at about 12:45 in the afternoon. There were two back-to-back blasts about a half a second apart, and some of the residents made some complaints about them. The first blast was 39 holes, and the second blast was 49 holes. So that was below the old 60-hole limit that we had just raised. I saw the readings. They were all below their allowed allotments on their charts. The reason that you might have felt them or heard them a little bit more was because they were an enclosed blast with only one open face. Usually they have at least 2 or 3 open faces on the blasts. And there's also some discussion about the quarries going deeper. While they got the approvals to go deeper, they do have 5 years from the time that they signed the contracts on that. So that's not up yet. And even after 5 years, they may not be at the point to go deeper. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Amy. Department reports, clerk's office.
I just have a couple things. I did get a letter from the Sussex sled dogs. While they didn't really get to use the trail through the park, they did forward a $25 donation for the parks again this year, as they have for letting the snowmobile trail go through the parks. Also have some training, local government 101, Kevin, if you're interested, or the newer trustees. There are some training opportunities available. If you're interested, let me know and I can get you signed up for that. Just let me know. And utility bills are due next week.
Thank you, Brenda. Police Department, Chief Bell.
Aside from the monthly crime summary that I distributed, I have nothing.
Question, Chief, how's your success rate on the new squad? Have you had any luck on that yet?
There's been nothing since last month. Our order has not been sent for completion yet to the factory. So we're looking at the third quarter of this year for delivery. We're lucky. I did check some lots for vehicles that are laying around that maybe we could repurpose, and there really aren't any that I could find. Not at the price that we're looking at anyway.
What's that gonna do for our grant, Chief?
We can still expend the grant even if we don't have a truck, so we're not gonna lose it.
How long can we extend that for?
I don't think we can extend the grant, but we can pay it towards the truck, even though we don't have it yet. So I think we have until fall to spend it.
Okay. I just don't want to lose that.
We won't.
Thanks, Chief Bell. Citizen comments. This is meant for public comments on any subject without any discussion by Board of Trustee members or action, except for possible referral to a governmental body or village agent. Except as otherwise allowed by motion of the board, citizen comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Although written comments of any length may be submitted prior to the meeting to the village clerk. Please keep your comments respectful and no disruptive behavior will be allowed. Yes, Mary.
Yes, and I'm gonna request if someone can give me a couple of their minutes. I have about 5 minutes. If that's all right. Mary Medell, 7373 Vine Street. This is about my dispute regarding the DNR abandonment grant tax liability. In August of 2019, all wells must be closed. Each property owner will handle the well closing on their own. October 2020, private property well abandonment eligible for reimbursement programs up to 75% of the cost based on income. Requirement, the village board determined private wells must be abandoned after connecting to the water. October 23, 2020, a letter from the village. The well must be abandoned within 20 days of connection. You may not keep your well. At the bottom of this letter, under what's next, number 3, complete the well abandonment grant application and submit it to the DNR. The DNR grant will cover up to 75% of eligible abandonment costs based on income. The quarry fund will cover the remaining balance of abandonment costs up to 50%, which will be paid directly to the contractor. There was an enclosure with that. That was a Wisconsin DNR well abandonment grant program, which stated that your itemized estimate, property specific, will be available for pickup after December 1st, 2020. The village asks that you complete the application by December 10th, 2020. The document also states, if you are eligible to apply, please complete the well abandonment grant application form. October of 2021, the moratorium on enforcement of well abandonment was enacted. October 7th, 2021, the quarry fund decided to cover 100% of well abandonment costs if it occurred before the mandatory time frame for connection. We connected on December 16, 2021. We received our DNR well abandonment grant on March 3rd, 2021, 7 months before the quarry fund decided to cover 100%, and only after residents used their DNR abandonment grant money first. Note, at the time I applied for and received the DNR well abandonment grant, it was obviously advantageous to do so. I had no way to know that the quarry fund would later decide to cover 100%. I feel I'm being penalized for following multiple directives from the village board and Benwood to apply for the DNR abandonment grant. It's also discriminatory for some residents to pay tax on the well abandonment costs, while others who did not even apply for or did not qualify for the DNR abandonment grant are exempt from tax liability. April 12th, 2022. This is from the website. The village is unable to advise individuals about their tax liability. While that's true, the village was and is just as capable as I to ask what percentage the tax liability is for DNR well abandonment grants. It goes on to say, nor to produce funds to offset any tax liability resulting from external financial assistance received. I messaged Patrick about this. His answer was, you seem to have a very good understanding of the situation, and I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you. This inequality seems to be an unintended consequence that stems from the change by the quarry committee to pay the entire abandonment cost rather than the originally planned 50%. Inequality, discriminatory, unintended consequence. To me, either means there is some admission that something's wrong, either by the board or that maybe I did something wrong, by getting that grant. According to my tax accountant, the 2021 tax liability for DNR well abandonment grant is 12% federal and 5.3% state. Note, the 2022 tax laws may change these percentages. Work to abandon our well began in February of 2022. Also, according to my tax accountant, the DNR abandonment grant money was issued in the form of a check made out to the homeowner and is considered taxable income. Quarry fund grant money is issued directly to the village, and the village is paying the contractor's bills as they come in using the quarry fund money. Because the quarry fund grant money was not issued directly to the homeowner, there is no tax liability to those residents. So again, residents who did nothing to obtain financial assistance or did not qualify for DNR well abandonment grants are receiving an unfair and discriminatory advantage over those who followed village board's multiple instructions to apply for and receive the DNR well abandonment grant money. I am hereby requesting the village pay for, using quarry funds, individual residents' tax liability resulting from DNR well abandonment grants. That's it.
Mary, what was that percentage for the state again? I missed that.
5.3%.
Thank you.
Do we have any more comments?
I have one more unrelated, but this will only take a second. It has to do with something on the agenda, which is the discussion about the village ordinance to ban dogs from village parks. I have a kind of a concern about people possibly not being able to park in the Land and Lions parking lot and walk with their dogs across the street to use Menominee Park. We already have instances of cars parking on the wrong side, parking on the park side on Hemlock, parking on both sides. Right now, it's only a few, but if we ban them from utilizing that parking lot to take their dogs across the street to Menominee Park, my fear is that we're going to have a lot more traffic on Hemlock and Vine with parking to utilize Menominee Park for walking their dogs.
I will address that
That's it.
when that comes up. We've had that discussion with Hector and with Ron. Do you have any more comments? Discussion and possible action on approval of committee appointments. I just did this today. Grab one, pass them down. This was, I kind of made one change because Kevin Paquette was the vice president on a board of a bank. And I kind of chatted about moving people around a little bit to kind of cross train them, and that was not a positive. So with Kevin's background, I wanted to get him, God forbid something happens to Patrick if he moves, that we have somebody that's familiar with that. And Kevin's taken over for Anna on public safety and on Park and Rec. Do we have any more discussion on that? Item 12, discussion and possible action to approve, review the grant applications from the ARPA funds.
Do we have a vote on it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I would ask for clarification because from what I read in the administrative code, that's my call. It's the president.
It's your duty as president to nominate and appoint members to the committees. So it's on the agenda as a discussion and possible action. As you pointed out, Mr. President, it is your role as village president to make those appointments. So it's not a matter that requires board approval. But certainly there's nothing prohibiting you from calling a vote on it if you'd like to.
It would have been nice to have I emailed you, Don, actually I emailed the whole board last week, Thursday, requesting this ahead of time. And I received no correspondence from you at all. I also called Brenda this morning, hoping that maybe you had dropped it off, and I called at 11:30 and nothing was seen then at this time. And now we're just getting this in front of us. I think it would have been nice to have had this. If it was a board agenda item, you've obviously had time to come up with these appointments. Since Kevin was elected last month, and technically he was, his first month of taking office is today. But would have been nice to have seen these more than a moment ago.
I emailed you back today, Steve, with the explanation.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 5 days sicker than a dog because of a reaction to a heart procedure. And again, in my reading in I believe it is administrative code is 10. Does not state anything in there about board approval. We didn't do board approval last year when I took it. I'm sorry if you're offended,
I didn't say I was offended.
but I don't ever remember that being brought up for discussion in action in the last many years that I've been in here.
Do we have Kevin's email address and phone number available?
I will give that to everybody.
Okay.
I'll update that information on the website too. I didn't know what committees, so I didn't want to update that sheet until I had the information. So.
I'll get that to you as well, Brenda. So what's action on that, Chris?
I mean,
That's up to
yeah,
you.
There is none.
you don't have to take
It
it.
doesn't need to.
No, then I think we.
I mean,
move on.
we have approved them in the past. Every year I've been here, there has been a motion to approve, but it's fine. It doesn't have to be.
All right, just as procedure, then I'll make a motion to approve the committee assignments.
Have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action on approval of land and lot for open healing. Did you get any information? Liz Ilnicki contacted me a couple of weeks ago for a land and suicide walk. Kelly and I, not as board members, but as citizens, met with Liz, the Land and Lions Club president and secretary. We discussed changing the name so as to include a greater group of people that could benefit from this. It's still in the planning stages. This was Liz's idea, so I wanted to keep it with the LVA. The Optimist Club is going to be helping out. The Lions Club's going to be doing a brat fry afterwards. The route has not been set. We are looking to get donations to cover the cost of t-shirts. And I think this is something it will, as of now, it appears it's going to start at the Lions Clubhouse, go into the park and across down the bug line. There's a circle route in there that'll come out to a 3K. And this was when Liz approached me, I didn't want to take it away from her and make it a village event. Let's keep it with like the LVA. Get some groups involved, trying to get our hospital. I know she's been in contact with Chief Bell about getting some of our first responders
In
Um,
addition, it's not just gonna be suicide, it's going to be mental health awareness, addiction,
Overdose.
overdose, basically covering a wide range of just things that as a community, we should be kind of watching out for people who are suffering from it, who might not be reaching out. So we thought it would be something nice to do.
And it's something to try and bring the community together. I know our Lions Club has lost a couple of members. Our community has lost members. And I think it would be a good idea to try and get people in the community to come out and get together, raise some money. This will be all donations. And Liz is handling the groups that will benefit from this. So as more information comes forward, it will be shared. Do we have any questions?
That's a motion. We table this item until we get further information from all involved. Second.
We have a motion and second, all in favor?
I have more discussion.
Yes, Amy.
I would think too that they might need permits from the county to use the bug line.
Liz is checking into that for the bug line and also for the county park.
Yeah,
Do you have any more comments, Amy?
no,
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Discussion, possible action to approve review of the grant applications from the ARPA funds.
So as I mentioned earlier in the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, one of our committee members, Bill Rudolph, has spent considerable time kind of vetting a number of available application forms and such from other communities for small businesses and for individuals. The committee's kind of gone back and forth on a couple of the different things involved with doing this. We have sought recommendations and suggestions from legal counsel to make sure that we're good to go there. So we do have these forms, which I believe were emailed to everybody. These are what we believe to be the final form of these, pending any significant comments from the board at this point in time, but basically we are ready to start distributing these forms and trying to get some of this money out into the community. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about the forms or had an opportunity to review them. You do have copies on your desk in front of you.
How will them applications be handled, Patrick?
So these are going to be available online in electronic format. They will also be hard copies available at the village clerk's office. There's also special instructions on here to redact any personal identifying information, banking information. We want to make sure that people are protecting their identity, critical identity stuff. All of the applications will be secured in the clerk's office under lock and key in Brenda's office. They will only be taken out and reviewed by the committee and then returned to that location after reviewing them and making determinations.
Once the applications have been reviewed by the board also, and the paperwork is done, the committee will return, as Patrick said, return that paperwork to Brenda, and the applicant can either choose to come and pick up the paperwork or choose to have us shred it. So it will be either destroyed by the village or the applicant will pick up their paperwork and take it back with them also.
I will say that on the individual, well, on both of the forms, really, there was a lot of discussion regarding requesting of specific financial information, tax returns, things like that. As much as we want to be sensitive to people's privacy, we really felt that that was a necessary component of determining need for these grants. And that is why we have put specific language in here about redacting or obliterating or otherwise obscuring any sensitive information. And that's why we'll take extra measures to make sure that they stay secure.
That item alone was subject for great debate in that committee.
Yeah.
To protect the residents.
Yeah. And then our intent or our hope was to start accepting these applications for review during the period of June 1st to June 30th. Double check that, make sure I got that straight here. Yes. We do have a postcard that will be going out to all addresses in the community. Once we get the go-ahead on these forms, we'll get those postcards printed and mailed to hopefully get everybody aware that these are now available.
Is there any more information on the postcards besides that?
I almost feel like you're leading me to something. Yes, there is. Yeah, there's also some information on the other side of the postcard about the new alert system and the OWL camera system and the availability of being able to watch the meetings either live through the VOWL system or to view recorded versions of the meetings from the website. How's that?
Thank you, Patrick. Discussion and possible action on approving the amendment to chapter 10 of the village ordinance to ban dogs from the village park.
Before we move on, can I
Oh,
just
I'm
ask, do
sorry.
we have the blessing of the board to move forward with those
Sorry.
applications? That's okay. I don't know really procedurally if we necessarily need action from the board, but I would prefer to have it.
I think, I mean, considering that it's on the agenda as a discussion of possible action, and approval of the grant applications, I believe it makes the most sense to have the board take a vote as to the approval of the applications.
I'll make a motion that the board approves the grant applications for the ARPA funds at this time.
Second. We have a motion and second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
That's right, Patrick. It's okay. Discussion and possible action on approving the amendment to chapter 10 of the village ordinance to ban dogs from village parks. This item came up for discussion last week. Our parks crew went down to do some maintenance at the park. There were 6 fresh piles of dog poop right around the playground equipment. Earlier, they had cleaned up a bunch of messes. So that there is, Hector thought that we needed to change this wording to the park because people are bringing their dogs in, they're letting them run, they're pooping all over the place. They're not being responsible owners. But if an owner gets out of his vehicle, according to Hector, has his dog on a leash, he then can continue to the bug line. But I was down there about a week and a half ago. Somebody had their little dog out, started chasing kids, nipping at them. Before I could do anything about it, the dog owner grabbed them, put them in a little kitty cart and pedaled away. We have a dog park in Menominee Falls. There's also one at Land Quarry. In order to allow Chief Bell to do something about this, Hector thought this was the easiest most practical way. I'm a dog owner. I have doggy bags in every vehicle I own. But I don't believe our parks people should be picking up somebody else's dog poop. We don't need kids falling in it. And we just have irresponsible pet owners.
I do also know that we did have an individual who had her dog at the park today. And the park guys actually saw her with her dog on one of the ball fields. He did his business and then proceeded at when Dennis went over to ask about, could you please clean it up? She's told him that her dog did not do it and absolutely refused to take responsibility and ended up leaving without cleaning it up. So
Well,
that's the kind of,
I'm a dog owner. And I check the ordinances for every municipality around us. That's Sussex, Town of Lisbon, Village of Butler, Menominee Falls. They allow dogs on leashes, no longer than 6 foot long, on the park premises. And I think it's not the dog's fault. And we can criticize the adult who's in charge or the parent of the dog. They're the ones who should be ticketed. And if anybody notices it, get a phone number, get a license plate, and call the police. It is their job at that point in time to issue a ticket. No warnings. Issue a ticket. We've got ordinances on the books about running free, about being on a leash, about cleaning up. I don't think we need to change anything. It's clear. The current ordinance says you make a mess, your dog makes a mess, you clean it up. If it's annoying someone, you stop it. If it kills, wounds, or threatens any other domestic animal, you call the police. We've got the current ordinance. Why are we trying to change something that we already have?
we also have 5 signs in the park that say no dogs allowed.
Exactly, and they should be gone. That's my.
Keith, as the ordinance is currently written, are you able to cite people if they have their dogs in there off of information from somebody else or a picture?
Yes. I would to add, though, that I have not been called about anything regarding dogs in the park up until now. So we'd take enforcement action if we knew this was occurring.
Well, what else does the board feel on this? I'm a dog owner, but I will not take my dog where there's other kids there. Not that my dogs are vicious. But all of my vehicles, there's plastic bags in it. And I'd be totally embarrassed if my dog pooped and I couldn't clean it up. But that's me.
I think I'm a little torn about this one too, because I think we're trying to do some things to make the park a little more friendly for residents and encourage use of the park a little bit more. I think that's the direction we're trying to kind of go. And I think that there are a lot of dog owners here in Wisconsin and in this community. And I think this almost discourages people from using the park. And you're right, there are other areas around, but you know, there's a lot of baseball games there. People might want to bring the family dog out with them as well. You know, it seems reasonable that to keep them on a short leash so that they can be controlled. And it is the owner's responsibility. And we would hope that the owners would be responsible and clean up after their pets, but we know that that's not always going to happen. And we know that even if we do this, you're still gonna find dog crap in the park. So, I don't know.
I'm not a dog owner,
Personally,
but
I'm kind of with Ron.
with the park being right across the street, I don't see why we necessarily have to have them on the ball field running around.
Yeah, I don't
Again,
think they
that's
should
my-
be allowed in certain areas for sure if there's activities going on there.
Right.
But
No, line 30 says no dog shall be allowed in any play area.
Right.
In village owned, so I guess then we have to define the play area. Dog on the ball field, that's,
Well, if the dog's on the leash, you're not gonna have the dog owner dragging it across the ball. I mean, yeah.
In regards to the signage that, was it you, Ron, or Kelly, who had said that there was no dogs allowed?
Yeah, there's no dogs allowed signs.
I
on
think
there.
if anything, we change, take those signs down and we put up sign that says dogs must be leashed at all times. And I agree, I think we shouldn't ban the dogs because, you know, a lot of people park there to walk the bug line. Marv Berg is to build a trail from his development down to not Menominee Park, but to the Village Park. So you'll have other people walking their dogs and they're not gonna stop at the Village Park and say, oh, I can't go anymore. You know, I think Ron was correct. We do have current ordinances that state that if there are issues, people should take whatever documentation they can and contact the police.
would it be worthwhile to move the signs over around the equipment area? Or do you guys feel, I'm sorry, Kelly, do you feel that that would be a waste of time?
We can move them and we have them.
I mean, I don't know, will it deter people?
I don't think it really will.
it's gonna keep the.
The law
It's like-
abiding
Yeah, it's like
people.
door locks, you know, it's gonna keep the law abiding people out of your house, but it's the people that just don't wanna be respectful of everybody else using the park are gonna continue to do what they do. Cops. Yeah. Maybe we can, yeah, do. So.
It's pretty sad that we have to worry about people cleaning up their dog on village.
Just an idea. I know Jan always looks for suggestions for beautification of the village with some of her car fund money. Maybe Kelly, you could talk to her and say, would they be willing to put up, I don't know what you want to call it, a doggy do bag station? Where if someone doesn't have a bag, there is a little station there and
Right.
I mean, I don't know what something like that would cost. And obviously you'd have to be refilled from time to time with bags, but that might
I'm sure Dennis
alleviate
and
some of
Jeff
the
would
people who,
rather
like I
fill
said,
bags.
yeah, they don't have a bag, they have no other choice. I mean, they're not gonna pick it up with their hand. They're gonna, walk away from it. But if there was something there, they might say, well, I'll walk over here and get a bag. There's one available. I mean, that's something that we could maybe look into or, ask if that's something that's possible.
Yeah, three or four of those strategically placed in there might really be helpful.
Elm Grove did that. To check with Hector and see if he knows what they cost and where they got them from.
I wouldn't bother Hector with that.
Well,
Not when he
just
charges
went
us what he
through
does.
that with Elm Grove, or we could give Elm Grove a shout.
I did all the signage for Hounds and Tap over here in the Falls. They have a bunch of those up in their dog enclosed dog area. I can email him and ask him where they got it.
Thank you. Just a thought on trying to eliminate a lot of work.
Yep.
Do we have any more discussion?
I'll make the motion that we table this item until we get more information from Patrick regarding the throwaway bags and information from the Cars on Main program as to whether or not they want to sponsor that program.
I'll second and add that Dennis might be able to influence that decision a little bit.
Right now, he's influencing another 1 or 2 loads of chips.
And do we have cameras up there yet?
No, because cameras down there would be, unless we went like with trail cameras, which I don't think that would help.
We
I
don't
was
have
just
internet
curious.
down there.
To put cameras up, we discussed that in the ARPA committee. First, you gotta get internet down there, and you're spending a bunch of money on internet before you can even think of the cameras.
They'd have to be cellular enabled or something.
Colleen, did you get any guesses on what that would run?
To get Wi-Fi on there?
I think that was quite a expensive option because I remember a little bit of discussion because the distance from here to there, if I remember correctly, that would have had to been a wireless internet
Right,
system.
because the system we have is all wired. And so it's a totally different system, plus you'd have to have the service outside.
That would,
Yeah, I don't think that's practical. to be
that would
honest.
probably be an extremely expensive option.
You might not get anything on the camera.
Exactly. You're not gonna get enough detail.
I
to
just
really
didn't
do it.
remember if we had ever ended up with them up there.
We had up there a trail cam.
Do we have any more discussion on item 13? Motion to table. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion possible action on approval of a resolution to support Town of Lisbon Incorporation. There were some questions as to the legal language on that at the last meeting.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, there was concerns that the village was making representations regarding whether or not the town of Lisbon and its incorporation petition has met all the applicable standards. So it was requested that a revised version of that resolution be adopted or be provided to the village for adoption, which sort of takes out any of that language indicating that the village is expressing an opinion as to whether or not the town has met the legal requirements for incorporation. The new revised version of this resolution is simply to suggest that the village is in support of the incorporation of the town, but it's not making any comment as to whether or not it meets the legal requirements necessary for incorporation.
Am I missing something, or I didn't see a copy of that in the packet? I don't see a resolution presented from them in the packet.
Basically the same resolution. You didn't get one, really? I didn't put them together, so.
Oh, did they provide one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Did everybody else have one?
I don't have one either.
Okay, review and pass it on.
Speed reader.
Can you just
Sorry.
read it to us, Patrick, please?
Yeah, I'll just read it. Resolution number 2022-2, a resolution in support of Town of Lisbon Incorporation, whereas the Town of Lisbon has filed a petition for incorporation of the town as a village, and whereas the Town of Lisbon has changed over the past decade in terms of urban development, service provision, and whereas the town has been a good neighbor to the village of Landon, engaging in the sharing of services and potential additional opportunities for collaboration in the future. And now therefore, the village of Landon, by this resolution, supports incorporation of the town as a village. Dated this blank day of blank on Summers and Brenda with an attestation. That's plain enough for me now.
Yeah, you were the one that had the question on that, so.
That works for me. I mean, I don't have a problem with this. I don't know how much meat it really carries for them, but
What's your thoughts, Chris?
I mean, it's one of the standards that the Incorporation Review Board is going to look at is sort of how is this incorporation effort being perceived by the neighbors of that municipality? This is essentially an offer of support for that incorporation. But again, it sort of takes away the concerns that were included in the last version as to whether or not the village is making statements as to whether or not the town has met all the legal requirements necessary for incorporation. So to the extent that the board wants to show support for the town's attempt to incorporate, I believe that this resolution would accomplish that without making any sort of statements as to whether or not it's met some specific legal requirement for incorporation.
I agree. I'd make a motion to approve this resolution.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on approval of temporary Class B beer license for Hit-a-thon.
This is a one-day event that they have at the park every year, so this is just the application. And then the next item, I believe, is the operator's license for that, for the Hit-a-thon that will take place on June 11th.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary Class B beer license for the Hit-a-thon.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on operator's license for Hit-a-thon.
I'll make the motion, we approve the license application.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding payment application number 5 for Mid-City Contract 2033. Ben,
This one's fairly straightforward. I have no questions over their total amount that they're asking for, which is $249,016.62. But they need to properly account on here for change orders. It shouldn't result in any change in the cost. It's just a matter of keeping track of things.
you know, we're still holding 65 grand.
Correct.
Thank you. Do we have any more discussion?
No, I'll make a motion to approve payment application number 5 for Mid-City Contract 2033.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding payment application number 5 for PTS contract 1-2021.
Similar procedure here. They're asking for $167,750. Have no hesitation with that. So you can go ahead and move accordingly.
Is there, real quick, is there any update on the equipment for that lift station?
Yep, there sure is. So the Energies is probably within, I'm gonna say, 4 to 6 weeks of installing power to the station. The station is operating in a temporary fashion. So PTS contractors brought in their own temporary control panel and temporary pump, hooked it up to the force main. It is serving Rock Point Village Phase 2, which had a move-in date of May 1st. And temporary bypass pumping was part of their contract in order to handle this situation. So they're operating in that fashion, and it sounds like they might be doing so for approximately another 4 to 6 weeks until they get permanent power there.
And did we identify I caught some emails about like a leak in something there?
Yeah, so when they first went to start that system up, there was a lot of clear water in there. And you'll recall the last several weeks, it's generally been pretty rainy. And what they found is all the building pads that are not covered and enclosed had a bunch of water sitting on them. So despite you know, the contractor plugging the drains,
Right.
you know, inevitably the actual workers come and unplug them to let the water drain out. So that's what was filling the system. Feel pretty comfortable with that theory now that it's been operating for several days.
So right now, building 6 has 21 units. Building 7, which will occupy June 1st, will have 15. And those, then 2 weeks after that, roughly.
I think
it'll
it's
be
another
up and
15.
operational.
Yeah. But the temporary pump that they have in there right now is a 1,000 gallon per minute pump. And it operates automatically on, it's actually a diesel powered pump that has automatic float switches all rigged up in it, so it doesn't require like manual on off operation. And it's a 1,000 gallon per minute pump, which is at least twice the size of the pumps that are going in there, so I feel pretty confident in the temporary operation in the meantime.
We have any update on when they're supposed to be getting our permanent generator in there? Or
After January. The standby connection, so August Winter is their subcontractor that's doing all the above ground piping and equipment. I just heard from the project manager that they're supposed to mobilize this week back to the site to start installing all the piping and everything. So I don't know how soon that kind of temporary portable generator connection will be ready.
I remember there was some discussion as to who was gonna provide the generator once they got it going, but it sounds like we're a ways off from. worrying
Yeah,
about
correct.
that.
And they're actually more hopeful now that permanent power will be available such that it won't have to operate for a long period of time off of the backup generator.
And then is the plan to use one of our 2 backup generators in the meantime,
Correct,
if we need to?
correct.
And have those been checked out again?
Them are serviced by the Falls sewer that's under contract for the last several years. The same guys that are here that pull them out. I don't know, do they fire them once a month,
Until
Rhonda?
October.
They fire them a couple times a year for sure,
Okay.
to check them and
Right.
change the
But
oil. and do all
that
stuff.
is in their contract to keep them up, which
Okay. So they should be in good working order. Yeah, if we need.
So we have a lot of.
and hopefully Ben has success long before them.
Yep, right. But it's storm season's approaching, so.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve pay application number 5 for PTS contract 1-2021.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding Strand Associates Incorporated Amendment Number 1 to Task Order 21-02 related to design and construction of the Custer Lane Lift Station, Main Street Lift Station, and Good Hope Road Lift Station.
So this was originally brought before the board in March, and while we didn't have the formal scope worked out and fee worked out, I've kind of freshened up the same one-page kind of layman's explanation of all the bullet points as to kind of what's gone on with the lift station projects. In a nutshell, the intent was to do all 3 lift stations all at once. And then once we found out about the equipment delays due to the lead times, it kind of took away a lot of the efficiencies of being able to build all the stations at the same time. Another major factor in there was Menominee Falls notifying that they weren't going to take on the village's SCADA signals anymore. So we're actively kind of working through how to adjust toward that and some of the other things noted in here. So it works out that overall it's a $0 amendment, but it's just a change in scope to kind of repurpose what's there and pivot towards this new approach.
Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
We don't have. a
We
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion that we accept Strand's amendment number 1 to task order 21-02 in regards to the Custer Lane lift station, Main Street lift station, and Good Hope lift station.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding bidding and bid opening for contract 1-2022 Custer Lane reconstruction.
Right, so this one's more interesting. Bid opening was Wednesday last week and 0 bids were received for the Custer Lane Road reconstruction projects. So doing a little reconnaissance and calling down the list of all the contractors that pulled plans, we kind of summarized all the responses for folks as to why they didn't submit. They ranged from some contractors saying that they had 8 other bids due the same day, and Landon's was the smallest project on their list, so it didn't make the cut as far as what they could submit. And all of these should be taken with a grain of salt, because the bidding period was open for 3 weeks. The most common response was that due to equipment lead times for some of the underground work, because there is some water main and some sanitary sewer on this project, specifically any ductile iron fittings, there's a very long lead time right now. We had established a substantial completion date of November 1st. As some of these issues kind of came to light, they felt that that was a very reasonable time frame for getting the underground work done, but they were nervous as to whether or not with their other obligations, they would also be able to get the road work done. So in talking this through with several contractors, they would be interested in bidding it if we rebid it and change the completion dates. Internally at Strand, we discussed changing that date to August 1st, 2023. Reason being that it would give an underground contractor plenty of time to get the water and sewer work done this year if it fit. If there's a road builder out there that has room in their schedule, they can still get it done this year. But if they want to push it for underground work during winter and road construction in the spring, if we had another year that's as wet as this year was, they would still have a full 3 months to get the project done, which would be plenty of time. The improvements are needed as part of the county's requirements, you'll recall, related to Rock Point Village Phase 3 and having a second entrance. One thing that Ron wanted to make sure of when he and I discussed this was that if we give a lot longer lead time, that Custer Lane isn't going to be tore up for a long period of time. So when we revise the dates in the contract, our plan is to give the contractor X number of days to get the underground work done. And if the project sits idle for more than 3 weeks, then they have to do asphalt restoration until the road builder comes back. So that would be, in the scenario that the underground work gets done this fall, but the road work doesn't start until spring, then there would still be asphalt on the roadway during the winter. It's a very similar approach to the Benton water main contracts concerning requirements about temporary trench restoration and trench patch, etc. So we're optimistic that if the village would authorize us to go ahead and rebid the projects right away, that while a lot of contractors pulled plans and are familiar with it, that we would get bids if we switch up those dates and re-advertise.
When do you want the final bids to be opened?
We would target award at the June board meeting. We would want to, if you give us the authorization, we would want to get the ad into the paper by this Friday. The ad would run the 18th and the 25th, open bids on the 1st. And then we would bring bids here on the 13th for award.
Feel good about this, Ron?
I do. I think that's the best way to go. Now that we know what the problems were, or supposed problems were, we can address them with the length of time, with the substantial completion date changed. Yeah, I think with the provisions, then to make sure that the road, in case it's a long drawn out process, that the road is usable and we don't have to worry about kicking up gravel when we plow the dog off there. So that in mind, I'll make a motion that we approve Strand to rebid the Custer Lane project with the time frame that Ben just laid out for us.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion?
Quick discussion with Ben, in regards to that June 1st bid opening.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's gonna be enough time for them to? I just know with all my contractors I work with on a daily basis, and I work with the largest ones in Wisconsin.
Yep.
They are crazy busy,
Sure.
and even though this is a small project, they got a lot of stuff on their plate, and, I mean, if you talk to them and they said they'll get us a bid June 1st, or is that just kind of?
Yeah, I guess in alternate schedules, if we gave them 3 weeks, then we would be opening on June 8th and looking to still bring the bids for award here at the June 13th meeting. So it's real similar turnaround that we were hoping for tonight,
Okay.
quite honestly. So it's really no harm to us.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have bids this time, and
Yeah.
I just know how contractors are at this time of the year, and
Yeah, it's fair.
everyone's got a lot on their plate.
And it reminds me, the other option that we kicked around was, do we just wait until fall, and rebid it in fall and wait for some folks' schedules to just
That
flesh
might,
out a little bit?
that might be a better option, only for the fact that they'll know what the supply chain market's gonna be like, because it's so volatile with back orders of everything, as we know with our lift station stuff. I mean, everyone's got backlog of materials they're waiting for. And maybe by then we'd have a better idea, or they would have a better idea, because a lot of guys, they're gonna bid it and they don't know what's gonna happen with pricing.
Yeah.
And if they're bidding something here June 1st for completion possibly of this year, otherwise August of next year. I mean, right now, we're not doing more than 7 days on our negotiations with my company.
Sure.
And I know a lot of those companies are doing the same thing when they're bidding work, like that price is good for this and that's it. Otherwise, they put in the escalation clause of X amount of percent after this, this date. And we may be running into that with our June 1st, target, whereas it may or may not be beneficial to wait to do this in fall. I mean,
The other thing that Mid-City, for example, told us was that some of the harder items to come by, such as like the water main valves, right? We've got a large diameter valve. Lead time on that is 12-ish weeks. So the one advantage to bidding now, they can schedule it knowing that, all right, they're gonna do their shop submittals and they can afford to wait 12 weeks for that to come in and not worry about kind of bumping up against their completion dates.
okay.
What about if we went to the June 8th and used the fall plan for Plan C?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just hoping we get bids on.
Yeah,
June.
yeah.
That's all. I mean, I guess you're right. I guess if we come up and we have bid opening at 0 bids, then we will have to do a fall bid
Right.
letting.
Right.
So
but if we extend it to, what was the date?
August
Steve? Well,
26th.
no,
August 1st.
Oh, August 1st for
substantial
completion. Yeah, I mean, I think that right there is gonna play a big
not the
factor. into it.
completion date, the bid opening for the extra
Oh.
week.
Oh, yeah, June 8th.
June 8th.
Yeah, June 8th.
Yeah,
And my brain's a lot funky too. But if we go with give them an extra week and try, if we get a bid go through that works, and we
Yeah.
can start on it
I think the extra week to bid, the extended completion date, because everyone's booked with work for this year and into the first quarter of next year already. Everyone I've talked to. And I'm sure the road, these guys are no different. So, if you find a guy who's gonna actually bid it and do the work this year, I'd be shocked and amazed. I think it's gonna be next year because everyone's got their backlog ready.
We
So-
could rebid it with the
Yeah.
June 8th date, but extend the substantial completion date.
Right, yeah, I know.
August.
Yeah.
Sure.
August next
You
year.
know, no later than,
Next year.
I mean, they, that way they can do it earlier if they want.
Right,
They aren't locked into. forced to
Correct.
do it.
Will we be running into any issues safety wise if that road's not done?
Yeah, the
Because we're
trick-
still waiting on Main Street.
Yeah, the driver for trying to get everything done this fall was to make sure that there's always, once phase 3 of Rock Point Village gets occupied, which I don't know if they get occupied any sooner than late fall. They're delivering the last building in phase 2 in September. Anyways, excuse me, it's to have 2 entrances, particularly for emergency vehicles. But I think that, we've done on all the other developments of just making sure that everyone's aware of provisions to keep emergency vehicle access open at all times. So from here on out, it's just kind of, we're gonna get it done as quickly as reasonably possible.
I'll make a motion that we rebid the contract 1-2022 for Custer Lane reconstruction with a bid opening of June 8th and with the completion date of the project August 1st of 2023.
So. I think, didn't we already have a motion in a second?
Oh, did we?
That was-
I apologize.
Yeah.
That was further discussion.
Okay, I got off track, sorry.
Can we amend our,
We'll amend my motion to have bid opening on June 8th of 2022 with final completion date August 1st, 2023. So
we have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action to direct village staff to prepare grant applications for Wisconsin Department of Transportation bipartisan infrastructure law fiscal year 2023 to 2026 local road grants.
Some of you perhaps have heard about WisDOT's BIL programs. They had an initial program for fiscal year 2022. Applications were due a couple months ago, and those were for shovel-ready projects that didn't have any real estate or utility or anything else, just basically mill and overlay type projects, which the village didn't have any. But due on June 3rd is a solicitation for project applications for your traditional reconstructs or more complicated projects. One project that comes to mind for me for Lannon is Good Hope Road, west of Main Street. It's in the TID project plan to be reconstructed. I know that Don has gotten some, and Brenda have gotten an inquiry, at least from one resident, about when that road's gonna get fixed, because it's getting harder and harder to keep up with the maintenance. It's always been the thought that when the water main goes in to serve the Cauley farm, that the road would get reconstructed at the same time. But if there's an opportunity here, it's a 80-20 cost share program. So if the project were successful in getting funded, to have 80% cost share covered is rather attractive. Now, I will say some of the downsides to the program are that you have to follow the entire WISDOT procedure as far as preparing all the design and bidding documents, et cetera, which adds approximately another 30% to the design end of the cost. But the design is eligible for cost share also. Now, eligibility is a fickle thing, you know, Landon is eligible, this project is eligible, but the chances of success are something that I really don't have a good feel for. For the fiscal year 2022 projects, it seems like a lot of that money went to Milwaukee and some of the more near suburbs that have higher traffic volumes, et cetera. But I think it would be worth it for the village to put together an application for that. The cost to do so is about $3,500. So if the village is agreeable, we would prioritize that and get an application together for the June 3rd deadline.
So do we get to submit a simple application for $3,500 and then we'll know whether or not we're gonna have to go through all this other extra?
The announcements come in July, if they're gonna announce all the successful projects. And I guess the other thing that's critical about this is the only solicitation they're planning to go through their 2026, which is all of the state's kind of transportation VIL.
Two other factors that I have in consideration of this then is, have you had any preliminary discussions with Phil at Ellers about, you know, can we use TID, because it was identified as a
Yep.
TID project, can we use TID funds for any extra engineering costs?
You
Are
can,
they eligible?
there are no stipulations on how you come up with your 20% cost share.
And can we put water main?
Yes, it's not an eligible cost, part of this program,
Right, but there's nothing that would prohibit us from doing that,
correct?
because that was always the plan, is to wait to reconstruct that
Correct.
until we were gonna run mains, but.
Sure. Yeah, that would be a bridge to cross, I think, if we find out that it's funded. And what you're driving at is, hey, if we were waiting another 5 to 7 years to do the water main, but now we end up doing the water main sooner, is it all worth it in the end? My intuition says yes, but
There is some curb that is sinking and broken up there on the south side of the road.
Sure.
And that just happened recently, so if that is undermining that there, we could be looking at severe problems with it. Sinking of base material and large holes.
other roads that have been on my mind would of course include, say, Land and Village Hills. But after seeing how the selections panned out for the fiscal year 2022, honestly don't think there's a chance that those roads get funded. Wisdot was very zealous and in my opinion even overpromised. Yes, put in all your local roads, your low volume roads, your roads that don't ever get touched, the roads that you don't know how you're going to pay for. And in their fiscal year 22 selections, you saw those projects in there, but I didn't see any of them get picked. Whereas I think Good Hope Road, you can make a better argument as far as supporting business and commuters, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll make a motion that we allow Strand to fill out the application and submit it for the FFY 2023 through 2026 bipartisan infrastructural law, BIL.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation from the Plan Commission to start a streetscape plan.
Right, so do you all have some of the sample materials in your packet? Perfect. So the Plan Commission discussed at its last meeting wanting to proceed, I forget the exact phrasing of their motion, but to establish a streetscape plan. It is a project that was identified currently in the TID2 project plan. There's, I believe, $150,000 total for kind of streetscape improvements. 200,000.
Didn't you later come back and say?
Yeah, maybe it did. At any rate, some of the broader concepts were, with what the ARPA committee is looking at, with other historic preservation grants that folks have expressed interest in, with just some of the other opportunities here. I've kind of taken a handful of calls, just kind of one at a time of, hey, what if we went after this WEDC grant for this? And I reached out to Architecture as a firm that we have seen and admired their work, and I reached out to them and kind of talk about, having a plan together really helps kind of with a coordinated effort and helps make for stronger grant applications, et cetera. And right now the architectural standards, for example, in the zoning ordinances are really loose. It just simply says it should blend in with the surroundings more or less, whereas this might give you an opportunity to sort of come up with the design palette or some design standards, so that when folks do come in, they kind of know what to expect as far as an aesthetic. So again, Brenda, I don't remember the motion language from the plan commission meeting, but the idea was to reach out to architecture to just talk to them and get a proposal from them. It's not at a stage to authorize anything yet, but I reached out to my contact there just to kind of get an idea for some samples of deliverables and talk to them about, in my mind, it's maybe 3 stakeholder engagement meetings, and 3 different official village meetings, et cetera. But really it would be up to the board, I think, to maybe identify a board member or few to be in communication with architecture and talk to them about what you would like to see and get a proposal from it.
I remember Mike Grimmett wanted to get people from all of the neighborhoods to try and, but again, here, are we actually going to get people that show up to get involved in this? How's the board feel about starting with that, or do we just want to move forward in a slightly different direction? It's going to cost.
How does this compare with what Liz wants to do?
So this, I'll speak to that a little bit. So Liz has been bringing, I got involved with, geez, how did this start with Liz had put together a group. We had a meeting over at KCOM, and it was like Nate and Jeff and I and Liz, a couple other people, and I forget what that group was called, but then the ARPA thing came up, and then the whole possibility of being able to use some of these funds to do some village beautification stuff and some planning. I mean, we all agreed that, look, the first step in this whole process is we have to create a plan. We have to have a vision for the village and what that's going to look like. And even if it changes, at least it's a starting point, right? It's like, because if you go apply for these grants, that's what they want to see. They want to see that you actually have a plan in place. You have, different target areas and things that you're looking for. And it's not just, hey, give us some money so we can throw it at these projects willy-nilly style. So we had originally, and I think you'll recall it, I've mentioned it earlier board meetings, that the ARPA committee might come to this board and ask for authorization to use a certain amount of funding for that type of planning. And Liz had actually, and I think Colleen even, or Jeff, all had discussions with, the lady that owns the land between Nibs and Bibs and Quarry Coffee. They engaged a landscape architect from Kelly's Greenscapes to do some preliminary renderings and conceptual drawings for an area over there and some beautification in front of the village hall. And then Ben kind of caught wind of this and said, hey, you know, by the way, we've got this company that could really be useful. And oh, also, we've got this much money already identified as part of the project plan for one of the TIDs. So shame on me for not knowing that or remembering that. But so we basically on the ARPA committee said, well, okay, all right, pump the brakes. Let's shift this over then to that so that we can preserve as much of the ARPA funds as possible for getting out into the community for the grants. So that kind of summarized kind of about how this came about and kind of the evolution of this. So we have some kind of conceptual stuff that we could at least provide architecture with, like, hey, here's kind of what we're thinking for these couple of areas. You know, here are some other areas that we've identified as target areas and places we want to do some things, or we see as the important areas, like the bug line area down by the BP station is one. The corner of Good Hope and Maine over here, those two corners, you know, there's a chunk of land on one corner and a less than attractive building on the other. You know, so there's some opportunities.
If I may, kind of some things that maybe you all remember, jog your memory a little bit, that'll all get kind of pulled together in this plan. You'll remember Tom Gudix had put a lot of effort into getting new village signs that were actually, you know, carved out of land and stone. There's the vacant pieces of land that you had talked about. I think the ARPA committee was talking about, you know, doing some landscaping around here. I know even back to the time when Jerry was on the board, there was talk about, hey, is the grant money out there for older style lamp posts, etc. Well, this kind of pulls all those things together into a coordinated plan. What's it going to look like, where, etc. I know folks even have talked about wayfinding signage on the bug line to try to get a little more steer people towards some land and businesses off of the bug line, let them know where they can pull off for a rest stop, etc. You know, all of those elements can get pulled together in a plan.
And walkability, connecting some of the newer communities to the downtown area here, if you will, via, you know, either extension of sidewalks or paved paths, like from the bug line up to Village Park there. There's, you know, there's a stretch there between the bug line and the park that there's no paved access other than the road. You know, that's not safe. So things like that. So I think this is awesome. I'm all for it. But your question was, who do we get involved? So, right, I mean, I think
the first iteration, whoever it is, will be tasked with talking to architecture, communicating overall objectives that the village wants to get out of it, and kind of doing an initial review of their scope that they come up with to kind of do that first iteration before bringing it back to that commissioner board.
Ben, do you know if any of these that are pictured here have been completed projects? Some are dated like 2020, some are 21.
Yeah, that's a good question. So some of these plans are kind of fresh as far as what's actually been completed and built. I know that architecture has done a number of them, including with
It
us.
looks really cool, but I'd love to see if one actually got done.
Yeah, sure. Fair comment. Fair comment.
right. So maybe, Don, maybe to answer your question, it would make sense to have, you know, a few board members doing the initial discovery. And then if you want, maybe we pull in and form a smaller committee, kind of like we did with the ARPA committee, to get some citizen input.
Or we use the ARPA committee that currently came up with the ideas. See if they'd be willing to talk with them.
I know there's certainly some people on there that would be interested in continuing to pursue that.
If I could suggest for this initial group, I would say no more than 3 and at least 1 person from the plan commission. And again, part of their scope will be doing the stakeholder outreach, and it could involve public, like open house meetings. And there'll be plenty of time to get input, I think, from all the right demographics.
Having a committee of 3 sounds a whole lot better than 10.
Well, you get a lot more done a lot faster.
And they'll actually show up. Bless you.
Sorry.
Any more thoughts? You want to bring somebody from the plan commission? I think I have a real good person. We wanted to get a group together, so I think we should volunteer for the group from the plan commission.
Sure.
Any more volunteers?
I mean, I would presume, are you gonna be part of that group as well? I mean,
It sounds like a challenge.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because I think we're all kind of waiting for your direction, but I mean, I'll certainly be involved if.
I think we need to put something together.
I would be willing to help, but I've never done anything like this before, so it would be learning experience for me.
The information that you're getting from
Liz has done a lot of work, Liz and Jeff. have done a lot of work on this already.
approach them and see if they want to be part of it. And you as Park and Recs. And then if really we need somebody from the planning commission, which it sounds like that recommends that we do, approach the commission and see who wants to do it, rather than select them. Or volunteer. It's always best, you get more cooperation if you ask, rather than say you're gonna. That would be my recommendation. In fact, I'll make a motion to do that.
Second. So
My motion would
Can
be
you- can
to
you
have
count 'em
Park
out
and
for me then?
Recreation be the lead on it with the cooperation of the ARPA committee. Who would want to volunteer from that? And to seek a volunteer from the planning commission to serve on the committee.
Okay.
To work together, develop a plan, and then get in touch with Parktecture and work out a program to beautify the village of Landon.
okay, so 3.
Yes.
Make sure I was clear.
Yeah.
Hoping I wasn't gonna run out of fingers. Yeah, I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Discussion and possible action on payment of the bills.
No.
23.
My head's about this big right now. Discussion and possible action for residential and commercial water connections that have not been completed.
I can talk about this one. So Hector's office sent out another round of letters. I understand both regular and certified mail. This was follow-up on board action from, I believe it was the April meeting, or it was the special meeting, which would have been the 18th, to give everyone one final notice before the June 1st date, which is the date the village board previously established as, connect by that date or face enforcement action. So what's interesting is that this list grew a little bit because in the past it was sent to those that Mid-City had identified as either holdouts or having not completed their consent agreements. But there's another category of folks out there, property owners, most of them commercial, who have been cooperative, but they're just last in Mid-City schedule here. And there are a couple of properties, in particular, Filtration Concepts and Painted Dolan, that due to site conditions may or may not get done by June 1st. I asked Mid-City that question this afternoon. They felt that if there are two properties at risk of not getting done, it would be those two. Filtration Concepts had some certain circumstances that maybe I'll let Patrick or Chris go into a little more. But I guess it just prompts the need for clarification from the village of I don't know, just either confirmation or redirection about June 1st. I know Chris, you can speak on this, but Hector was pretty adamant about sticking with the June 1st as that's the date that's kind of been communicated and established for a long time. And then the question will have to get posed ultimately to the Corey Grant Committee about, hey, if folks are being cooperative, but their work's not done, what happens to the grants if the June 1st date lapses? So that's kind of why this is back on the agenda for this month, was to give you an update on those things.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's been some discussion as to whether or not, or as what action the village should take for those properties that aren't in compliance by this June 1st date. I mean, I know it sounds as though that there are a few properties that have been doing sort of everything that they're been required to do, and it's just whether or not they're going to be able to hit that June 1st timeframe. I know that there's another property where there's possible demolition of the existing property that's on the location. So to the extent that you would require this property to hook up by June 1st, there may be some alternative that the village would want to explore for that unique circumstance. But again, it's been the village's position since the adoption of this policy that June 1st was sort of the drop dead date for when these connections are going to have to be put in place. So I guess it's a sort of it's a policy decision of the board as to how much it wants to deviate from that deadline and for what reasons it thinks it's appropriate to allow some modification of that deadline for specific properties.
I think the board, I think we've had this discussion in regards to this with, we understood that some of the people or some of the commercial properties were not being hooked up at the time because of unforeseen circumstances, because like you had mentioned, Ben, that Mid-City says there's some property issues with two of them. They don't know if they're going to get it done, but it's not because of the property owner or the residential owner. I think it's that aspect of it is more of a contractor issue, not a personnel or company issue. And I think the board was pretty, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty understanding of something like that. If a resident or a company says, yes, hook us up, and Mid-City says, we'd love to, but we can't get to it for whatever unforeseen reason, I think there's, that's one option or one scenario. I think really where we were the hard on the June 1st were those who refused to acknowledge the letters, allow Mid-City even to come to do a preliminary look to see what would be needed for hookup in that respect, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and more specifically with the filtration concepts, and I want to go into a little bit of detail on this one because I think it's important to get some feedback from the board. I had a discussion with Ben last week about it. I had a discussion with the owner about it last week. I circled Don in on an email that I sent to Hector. Kind of expressing my opinion on it. He has tenants in the home. He has every intent, or he claims to have every intent that he's going to demolish that building. He's been in discussion with Strand for months about engineering to expand their building, and that included the demolition of that structure. It's my understanding that the current tenants, for whatever reason, I won't go into specifics, but they have not been able to relocate yet. He's trying to give them, asking for one more month for them to do that. I don't see any sense in forcing someone to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to hook up a structure that's going to be demolished in a couple of months, if in fact that's what's going to happen. So I expressed to Hector that, I would be in favor of, in a special circumstance like that, we could potentially grant some latitude, maybe give them till August 1st. But they have to meet certain conditions in order to do that. And if any step of the way, there's any non-compliance, then you face the fines and penalties and forfeitures as is in the ordinances. And Hector came back with some more specific criteria. I think he listed 3 criteria that I thought, were kind of in line with what I was thinking, or seemed reasonable to me. So I know there's a great deal of concern by these tenants that are in there right now, because now they've been, all of a sudden, it seems that June 1st, needing to be out of the house is causing a great deal of concern to them. So I think, Chris, did you bring those 3 that?
Yeah, I believe it was the approval or granting of a demolition permit,
Yep.
The service of an eviction notice, and a $1,000 deposit that would be kept by the village in the event that some sort of legal action would need to be taken for their failure to abide by any of the conditions set forth with granting of this extension.
Now, that being said, our building permits, I believe Ben has told me, are good for a year, right? So, the big thing is the eviction notice, right? And that the structure is vacant by a certain date. That would be kind of a critical thing there. So that was kind of my take on it. I think Don kind of agreed with that course of action. So whatever we do here, we might want to provide some specific direction for those folks involved with that particular piece.
I've got it here. Fully apply for and obtain a demolition permit for the house ASAP and far in advance of the June 1 deadline. Serve an eviction notice on a tenant to be effective no later than June 30th. Provide the village attorney with a copy of the same and proof that it's been properly done. To post $1,000 in cash as security to cover the village's legal expenses in taking enforcement action against the owner if the house is not vacant by June 30th. But if we move that, what did you say, Patrick, to July?
Well, I think the idea is that we granted an extension to August 1st, but that the June 30th date was the date that the building.
Demo.
That's what he's asking for in terms of them being able to
Is this
vacate
the
the
old big
building.
blue house up there
Yep.
where the kids all live?
Has he talked to you at all, Ben, about timeline where he's looking to do this addition?
Yeah, he would have hoped to have demoed that already and started his building expansion, but of course, supply chain issues and prices caused him to go back to the drawing board with his design build company, that's Keller. They do a lot of these types of expansions. So they actually reached out last year to let me know if there are plans to do this. So kind of been, that's why the delay. And now they just notified me a few weeks ago, hey, we're delaying the project for redesign. And you know, it's, who knows? So their timeline suddenly overlaps with the cutoff date. They would have hoped to have been all connected and had that demo by now, but it just didn't work out. So I think they're about 6 months out from holding building permits for their expansion. So they got a couple months of redesign. They know they got to come to plan commission and then get state approved plans before they can get permits.
But there's certainly no shortage of backhoes across the street at Rams Contracting that can tear that structure down, so. We can get that ball moving and then not have to worry about that, but in the meantime, that gives the tenants an extra month. Try to find other accommodations. It forces him to show, or at least demonstrate, actual intent to demolish the building. And it also establishes a clear communication that if X and Y don't happen, then Z happens. And that's further enforcement.
I would agree with that. I would agree also with any of the other businesses or residences that have had letters sent out to them, that if they make the effort with Mid-City to have Mid-City come in and start the process of hooking up, as long as it's done before June 1st, as of they're on the schedule with Mid-City, that we forego any sort of ordinance enforcement. But if they're not on the schedule with Mid-City by June 1st, then they'll be subject to the ordinance compliance and forfeitures of our ordinances. Yes, Ben?
I would just add, I think that's being a little presumptuous that Mid-City will be available. You'll recall Mid-City brought a change order to the village board before the end of last year to say, hey, for X amount of dollars per property, we'll extend the dates. The board said no. They didn't want to enable people to continue to delay. So the arrangement with Mid-City now is basically, hey, Mid-City, as long as you have time in your schedule and you're willing to honor the previously agreed to price, we'll keep paying you.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know, suddenly if you know, 20 some odd properties tell them, okay, now we want to connect. That it won't just kind of restart some of the same heartache that they've had of people agreeing to a date and then not showing up and rescheduling, not showing up and rescheduling. Suddenly they don't answer the phone anymore, kind of a thing, for one. And for two, I just don't know. I mean, we're on borrowed time with Mid-City right now as far as their availability and them honoring the price. So I think it's hard to kind of inadvertently obligate them to kind of extend what they've already been extended. Sure.
Yeah, we'd have to get, you know, we'd have to get agreement from them and we'd have to get agreement from the quarry committee to pay the funds. So there's two, you know, two other parties that we can't really speak for. We can express our intent, right, and ask for them to provide their.
No, you're right. I had forgotten about that portion of it.
I asked Mid-City very pointedly, if all the people that have been cooperative with you to date, do you have time to get them done before June 1st? Said yes, with the exception of filtration concepts, because what they're trying to figure out is where exactly on site to put the water lateral so that their building addition doesn't prompt them to have to
Do it again.
6 months from now. And with Payne and Dolan, it's all rock. You know, they've got a 300-foot long lateral that's all in bedrock. So they just they're planning 3 days for that one, but you know, if it takes them a week, then that kind of has a domino effect. They said as far as everyone else has been cooperative today, they'll be able to get them done by June 1st.
So is Rams already on, that they're building on Main Street by the BP?
I don't know.
Yeah, I saw them working there the other week.
Can't they somehow piggyback off of that?
Easement.
I mean, building code says no. You can't have a shared service. I think what Jerry's getting at is if you had an easement and you called it, okay, this isn't a water service, this is a 4-inch water main, then you can figure out something different.
I think we use the ordinance as it stands. We don't, we let the filtration concept project grant them an extension based on the criteria that Hector cited. And,
And for Payne and Dolan, if there's any proof they already, almost 2 years ago now, prepaid their $7,500 or $8,000 connection fee.
Is Kimroy hooked up?
Yeah.
Green Acres?
Green Acres doesn't have one.
And then we have the third item that we discussed in closed session that we already discussed about. Extension of that time period as well. Yeah.
We have any more discussion?
So to be clear, just for the record then, let's just run through what that actually means for folks that don't connect. So let's say I'm a homeowner and I haven't let Mid-City in or whatever. What happens on June 1st?
legal action starts.
Yeah, they can be served with a citation and it's a per diem forfeiture of no less than $50 a day for each day that the property is not connected.
Along with, I think statutorily, we have the ability to start billing for water at 95% of the average user rate. I believe.
Minimum user rate. And the other part of it, you know, they still have to connect. But it would be without, presumably without the benefit of the grant funds.
Grant.
So they'll be losing out on all grant money then.
Yes.
Right. And it's been contemplated that for
Another costly endeavor.
folks that have allowed Mid-City to come in and do portions of the work,
Right.
but not complete the work, that they would be back charged for portions of work completed.
How many of these properties exist right now, residential?
16, I think was the last thing I heard the last day or two. I think we're down to 16.
And we're just holding out. They're not sent, they're not talking. Yeah. So it is. They refused letters, everything. I mean, we've got, the first set of letters went out in January, certified mail and regular mail. And then we had the special session meeting, which you were involved in. And that was our second round of letters to let these people, you know, have some time to let them know, you know, this is what's happening and to give them one more chance or another reminder.
Do you guys understand that these people's wells are not contaminated?
It's not
That's
about
all
that.
goes, yes, it is. That's what this whole thing is about. It's what this whole project has been about. And it's all just been BS, pure and simple.
That's not.
Yeah,
That's
a
not the
select
case.
group of homeowners got taxed for everybody else to get water hookup, plain and simple.
You make a motion, Pat?
That's- Did I make a motion?
Yeah. Oh, recap.
I did. I I just wanted to make sure that we went on record as to how this was gonna play out. We're gonna go forward with this, staying with this.
I will make a motion that we maintain the schedule of June 1st for non-compliance, with the exception of Filtration Concepts, with the meeting of those folks to the 3 criteria that Hector has put forth. And Payne and Dolan. That is, yeah, that's a mid-city issue into how they're going to put it in and what time they need to put it in due to rock and construction. That would be my motion.
I will second, and then I will amend or ask that we add the third, well, it's actually 2 connected properties that we discussed in closed session at the previous meeting.
And include them in the in the delay.
Well, one of them would be in the delay, but the other would not.
Right, the beauty shop. That we hold the beauty shop in compliance of the June 1st. Unless they come to the meeting and give us specific reasons for dispensation.
I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
the specifics of our discussion that we had regarding that and how we were gonna try to work that out from a logistics standpoint due to some of the challenges that were presented there.
Yes, because the pressure tank is in one location, the pump is in another, and the well, and
We're gonna have mid-city look at it, investigate what the possible solution was going to be.
I thought we were gonna do that. I had the, do you remember? No, you weren't involved in that. I'm sorry. I don't remember.
I was supposed to talk to Christine Swearingen from Valetz's Lawn, find out where she stood on it. As of right now, she says she's not hooking up and she is not giving up her well.
Yes, we
Then
know.
we push legal procedures.
I guess so.
Okay, well, I will second your motion then.
Any more amendments?
No, sir. Thank you for asking.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Me,
Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on payment of the bills.
Make a motion to pay the bills as presented by the clerk and recommended by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
second,
Motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Engineers report.
I have a couple of things I just want to provide updates on. Complaints were received today regarding water pressure at Land Estates in order to accommodate work up at the Land Estates well house. They're currently, as of today, running off of their backup connection that was installed on Diamond Drive off of Good Hope. Been in touch with CTW is the operator of both systems, and they feel that, you know, there's still 35 PSI of pressure everywhere, and if people have complaints, they're to contact Asset Development Group. They have a suspicion that because there's no hydrants or air releases in the line, that water's been flowing in one direction forever, and there could be air trapped somewhere, and now that water's finally flowing in the other direction, that maybe that air moved and it's getting something airlocked, but
I
they're
thought
also.
we already had like 5 properties over there tore up trying to find that where the air was.
Oh, those were other just leaks in general. They've
Alright.
been fixing a lot of leaks in anticipation of switching to municipal water, so they won't be paying for leaked water. At any rate, Mid-City will be done with this procedure by tomorrow morning, and it will be returned to the normal mode of operation. But CTW is also hopeful that, with the evening's water use, that additional air at present will have gotten purged from the system. Diamond Drive drainage, I've had some ongoing discussions with both Cut and Go separately with Asset Development Group. I pitched to Asset Development Group Hector's idea about just moving one or two of the problem units. Asset Development Group was actually very, very receptive to that. They got some bids for their engineer's design of kind of putting in curb and gutter and storm sewer, et cetera. And the quotes came back as expected around $170,000 to do that. Whereas they figure it would cost them about $40,000 to move a unit to another location in the park. So there, I communicated to them that the direction given to Cut and Go was you either mill out the pavement, the impervious area that was installed without a permit. You do a stormwater management plan for the area that was paved without a permit and demonstrate how you're going to manage that stormwater on your own site. Or you get into some kind of written agreement with Asset Development Group and work it out between the two of you and come back to the village and say, we worked it out, we're okay with everything. We're gonna hold the village harmless of, whatever happened with Jason Johnson's thing. So Asset Development Group is hopeful that they can pursue the latter option. Cut and Go is, I don't have, they seem cooperative, but there's no, I don't think that those two have reached any mutual terms yet, but just so you know, they're kind of actively working through that. I know that, of course, Cut and Go at Plan Commission at the end of the month hopes to come back with whatever revisions to the plan of operation are necessary. Concerning the TID amendments, we're working with Bill Costin and others to get them areas for amended TID boundaries. It's looking like there's a feasible option for amending both TID boundaries. And just look for that on future agendas. PSC rate application provided the last piece of information to Baker Tilly today for them to move forward with the rate case with the 2022 test year. So that'll kind of be ongoing throughout the next, I can only imagine, 3 to 4 months.
Thank you, Ben. Attorney's report.
I have nothing to report this time.
I'll do my report next month. I don't want to go.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.